And let me introduce Lorna, who most of you will know, who's sitting alongside me. Say hello, Lorna.
Hi. So yeah, obviously you'll speak to me regularly. I'm just trying to organise a few of these webinars on specific modules. So obviously you can ask the assessor questions relevant to what you're studying. So we'll try and organise more as time goes on. But if you have anything to ask Henry, then that's what he's here for. So ask away.
Thanks, Lorna. So, I mean, this is not a lecture. I mean, you're welcome to mine Carey for lots of information. Carey, I know, will have a lot of information. But at the end of the day, you know, do ask questions. If this is the first time you've popped onto one of these, they're really for your benefit. So don't sit there thinking, gosh, you know, if only or I wish. Ask away. No question is too daft. If you don't know something, then the important thing is you ask the question and find out about it. Just before Carey gets going, there's two books I'd like to refer you to. One is Surveying Sales, which is a little handy guide by IMS, written by Ian Nicholson. If you don't know Ian, I know Carey does know Ian. Ian is, we've been surveying for 70 years. That's very much his bag. Surveying Sales is quite niche. A lot of surveyors don't actually survey the sales, but if you do, that's a good book. And the other one, which Carey, I'm sure you'll touch on, is Synthetic Rigging, which is the coming technology. And this book by Nick Parkin is a valuable guide indeed. Also, I'd refer you to a video. It is a paid video, but I'm sure we can make an exception, because we'll probably do a discount on it. Kim Skov-Nielsen, who is, I regard as somebody of an expert on rigs and masts, did a 3-hour live presentation. Some of you might have been part of that earlier in the year. If you weren't, his knowledge is astonishing. And his video, his 3-hour presentation, essentially is him talking around a load of pictures that he's taken over the years to highlight some of the deficiencies and so on. So without further ado, Carey, over to you. Do you want to do a little self-introduction and perhaps talk us through that module, some of the key points of it, what you're looking for, and then see if we can get a dialogue going.
Hello everybody, I'm Carey, and I'm probably going to mark your paper if you put it in. This paper is very easy if you know something about the subject. It's very difficult if you don't. I don't know. Have you got this back to front book, Unit 28, which is our issue book? You should have it. It's on the web, or you can get it from Lorna or whatever it is, and it covers an awful lot of the paper. That is, it is matched to the paper. When you come to do the paper, if you've got that book, you'll find it goes hand in hand. The second thing which you most definitely need is some experience. If you haven't got experience of sailing, or indeed checking out rigs, then none of it's going to make any sense to you whatsoever. I'm guessing that every single one of you actually is a sailor, or has done some sailing, or knows a bit about sailing, and has seen rigs and knows what a shackle is and that kind of thing. Otherwise, there are research sites on the web, and there are books like Mike just showed you. You should have. I've got a little book in my hand here, and that says, if it was round the other way, Surveying Fiberglass Sailboats. It's cheap, it's bloody marvellous, but it is American, so it doesn't necessarily match French or English. But it's a very, very good book, and it's cheap. You can get it on Amazon. Surveying Fiberglass Sailboats by a chap called Mustin. The book that I always use is Rigging. Wiley's. It's a Wiley's issue. There are obviously the IRA rigging handbook. It's very expensive, but it's very good. Same applies to the Complete Rigger's Apprentice, but I'm afraid it's going to cost you a lot of money to get a second-hand copy. But you will need to do, obviously, a load of research if you're going to answer these questions. What I suggest you do for a start is go on the web and type in boat fittings, or depends which country you're in, but boat fittings UK if you're in Britain. It will open up a whole load of sites, and you can see people doing rigging, you can see the fittings, you can see all sorts of different things which would be of help to you. The same applies to furling systems UK, in-mast furling, and you want to follow that with in-boom furling and lazy jacks and all those kind of things. Sail makers UK, yacht rigging and supplies, and also sailcloth manufacturers. One of the difficulties people have is that a new brand of sailcloth comes out about every 6 months, and you cannot possibly keep up with them. But your best bet is to go up and down there and see what it says. If you've got questions about actual handling, because there's a question in the back of the paper there about handling spinnakers, you are not going to learn very much about sail handling by reading anything, really. You need to get on a boat and do it. Although I'll talk to people who are experts at it. I hope that is available to you one way or another. That makes a little bit of a start. Have you got any specific questions? Are there any questions in the paper that you want a little bit of enlightenment about, or anything really, anything you'd like to ask about whatsoever? I can go on all day. Here you go, Edward.
You'll need to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I got quite a specific question which arises actually from the other unit already done discussion in the chats, which is again in this unit tasks. It's pretty clear what we should know and what we should, let's say, show we know. Yeah, yes. But as everywhere, it's never. It is what it seems to be. So my question is there any hidden, let's say, a demand for the assessment, which is not clear from what is described in the description of the assessment, as it happened to the materials before?
Well, that depends on your particular level of knowledge, I suppose, is the answer there. To me, everything is blindingly clear in there, but I've been messing with the damn paper for, I don't know, 10 years or something.
That's what I say. For me, it is also clear.
Yes.
But I just wonder, maybe I do not see something.
No, I don't think so. I think the things that people have a little bit of difficulty with is that the first couple of questions are ridiculously simple, and the answers are actually shown right there in the book straight off. First couple of pages, these are the actual answers to those questions. I don't know, this little boat here and some other things here, and also the stress and that. I don't know if you've seen these things. They are in the question paper, and those are the direct answers. Where do I put my copy? I don't know, just here somewhere. I think people find those strangely simple and think perhaps they're trick questions. They are not. Just do what it says in the book there and you will be right. I don't think anyone's ever failed anything on those. They are exactly as it says. They are dead simple. Much harder to answer are questions in the other end of the paper where it asks you about sailcloths and it asks you about stitching and it asks you, if you don't know, you don't know, and it's hard to
yeah, that's what I mean. I guess I know, but there is an extent which you expect of us, because I can write a book about rigging and sails.
Yeah.
Oh, I can actually.
Good.
Probably my assessment being done will not satisfy you, so I just wonder which is an extent you expect.
When I come to look at the paper, or when the assessors come to look at the papers, he's looking to see whether you are a suitable person to be a surveyor. So he may see that you perhaps concentrate on one particular aspect and not another, or that you know about this and you don't know about that, but he will make an overall assessment of what your abilities are. And usually anyone who's perhaps, as you suggested, who was able to write a book about himself, that's going to be blindingly obvious to him. He's going to lose this chap knows what he's talking about. And he'll make a few allowances. When you do an exam paper, you do not have to get 100% in order to get a pass. You have to get a reasonable level. Now, these papers are not actually marked with any kind of percentage. It's just pass or credit or whatever the other thing is, or fail. Well, it's not fail, you resubmit. Obviously, we make some kind of, all the assessors will make a level of assessment of what your skills are, and don't worry too much about you having to get 100% right, nice, clear, decent answers. Remember that he's also thinking of, supposing you were writing an actual survey on someone's rigging. There's some clients come along to you and say, can you have a look at rigging, please, because the insurance company says you've got to, or whatever. And off you go and do it. You're going to have to write a report that is clear, to the point, and doesn't miss anything. If his backstay is coming apart, it's got to say, otherwise he'll go out sailing next year, his mast fall down. I think those are probably the guidance rules of it. There's no point in being too verbose. There's no point in being too technical. Your clients don't know anything about technicalities, but they do need to know that this bit of stitching is failing, this bit of sailcloth is delaminating, that bit of sailcloth isn't worth buying for the kind of sailing that they do. Equally, when you go around the rigging, you got to look at bloody everything, right at the mast, everything. Is there a sheave box here that's spread? Is there a particularly rivets falling out, or rivets doing a bit of galvanic action and turning all white and powdery, and the top's going to fall off? All of those many things. Does that seem to be some sort of an answer to what you're asking?
Well, basically. So the last question, which is actually current out of it, which would probably any pupil would ask, is there any limit of the assessment work you figure out? Like 100 pages, 50 pages, 150 pages?
I don't know, there it goes. All those things that I have said are the case. There are specific questions which people come up with about they've seen something on some masters, they'd be cracking it or something like that, and they want an answer to that. But usually, the people who do this paper answer those kind of questions pretty well. When you go to surveyor spa, you're only going to look along the length of it. There are interesting points about whether each thing should be on trestles or whether you're going to go up in a bosun's chair and all that kind of thing. But honestly, the things that you see which are wrong with them, overwhelmingly, you have decaying anodizing. The anodizing is going off the spar and it doesn't look very, or unless it was a painted one, the paint's fallen off and it's got galvanic action underneath it, and you scrape a bit off and there's a bit of white powder under there. Overwhelming the problem come out is decaying sheave boxes. Sheave boxes don't work anymore. The sheaves are worn out, or the halyards get down the side of them. Unfortunately, worn out running rigging. That is very common when you come to look at them. Running riggings, sad bits of rope that should have been replaced 10 years ago. You do most certainly see stainless steel wire that shouldn't really be there. But now that people are called upon by the insurance companies to replace the lot every 10 years, you don't see that nearly so much. I mean, most of the rigging is decently done on the first day. It'll last 10 years easily. Actual cloth depends what you do with it. A great many of your clients don't actually go out very often. Their boats seldom go out, you find. Some of them are out there all the time. The ones that are out there all the time need to take their sails into the sailmaker every year and get the stitching redone and all that kind of thing, because the sails flog themselves to bits. Although they're glued as well now. Okay.
Kerry, it's Mike. Can I ask you to say something about UV degradation on sailcloth, please?
preservation of sailcloths.
UV, particularly UV degradation.
Well, there isn't anything you can do to actually preserve them any better than what they were when the sailmaker supplied them to you. When you go to buy a set of sails, you're getting offered various different kinds of cloth. I don't know, Dacron, Terraline, one thing and another. I don't think you see cotton sails very often much anymore. But there isn't really any treatment you can give them beyond what the things are like when they are sold to you. And if they've got a lot of Kevlar in them or some other thing in them, then they will not be very happy under UV. And you see sails that are completely delaminated, a great sheet of the things delaminated, and very often little bits that are delaminating around the corner or something like that. Overwhelmingly, the most problems you will see with the sails is that they've got mildew on them because they weren't stored very well. They were stored wet in a bag or whatever it happens to be, and then they've got all the mildew. To a certain extent, that can be washed out, but that's about all. Otherwise, sails are expensive, and the clients of sailors tend to keep their sails going for years and years and years, and the things have gone all off shape, but they don't really care that much because they're not trying to win races with them. If they're racing clients, then they do, and they replace 1 or 2 sails every year, particularly the big head sails. UV is a curse of sails. Doesn't affect cotton ones, but it affects all the others to a degree. Till it's actually affected them, it doesn't really bloody well matter, because unless the person's going to go sailing around the world, he's only going to go out for a day or a couple of days, and he's going to come back. And if one of his sails has failed or blown away or burst, then he won't. Well, that's it. It's too late to replace it next week.
So would you expect to see in a report a comment about UV degradation if it was apparent?
I missed a bit of that, Mike. Go on again. You know, I'm an old and deaf person.
Would you expect to see in a report reference to UV degradation if it was apparent?
Would I expect to see it? I expect to see it all the damn time. If the sails are brand new, or if they've only been in use for a season, then you're not really going to see any evidence of UV degradation whatsoever. UV degradation you're going to see when you see it, because again, it depends where the sail is actually kept. Is it kept rolled up around the headstay? Is it kept in on the boom? Is it kept in a bag down below, or whatever? It's kept in a bag down below, then it doesn't get any UV degradation, or not for a very long time. The headsails get it because they have a strip, you know, they have the blue strip down them, and very often it doesn't seem to cover the sail properly, or because the people didn't bother to really furl it up nicely, something like that. That's where you tend to see it, at the top of headsails. Spinnakers may be a piece of nylon, and they'll last you forever because the people don't put them up very often. That answer the question at all? Is that?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm posing questions because I've seen these things come up, and I thought it might just be helpful to.
Those are the points. When you come to do sales, overwhelmingly, the things you come across are fungus growth, seams that are coming adrift because the stitching's given up, or actual tears in it. Somebody's stuck the end of the spinnaker boom through it or something like that, caught it on the stanchions. When people got that, they just take them to the sailmaker, and the sailmaker tacks them up with a L-shaped repair. Those are things you tend to see, but also you would readily see if a sail was very old and had gone past it. It's a nasty grey old thing with horribly off shape, horribly the stiffness gone out of the cloth altogether. That is obvious to a surveyor who's done a bit of sailing and knows anything about it. You can hardly miss it. Far more problem for the surveyor is he goes to look at a mast, and that has been seriously neglected, and the shackles are gone and the connectors are gone, or perhaps it's got a broken cross tree, or bottle screws that have been burned or not fit in the right degree, or split pins that are cut chunks out your hand when you go near them. Split pins that don't work anymore, and the things that fall apart. Those are the problems that you're going to find.
So
Well,
again,
that's exciting, isn't it?
yeah, if I can jump in again, Kerry, please, just
Yes.
to answer some slightly random thoughts, but I think they're important. Most surveyors these days don't climb masts. It's not something that a general surveyor seems to do. And I understand all the reasons why. So there are people who specialise in that type of work. I think it's very important in your report to caveat that you cannot see above head height if you've not climbed that mast. And I think it's important to put that in. I think most surveyors do that. The use of drones is interesting. Drones are wonderful things. And I've spoken to a few surveyors recently who said, well, I ran a drone up the side of the mast and it looked okay. And they've used the drone to report that. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with that. In fact, I'm quite uncomfortable with it, and I'll explain why. We held a rig and mast training day down in Southampton 3 or 4 years ago now. It was a fantastic day. We had a couple of masts that were actually laid out on trestles. I think it was I can't remember what the vessel was. It was a big mast. And the guy said to me at the rig shop, he said, there is a potentially fatal flaw in that mast. We're not going to tell anybody what it is. We're going to give them an hour to inspect that mast and see how many of them can find the potential fatal flaw. And 3 out of 32, I think it was, managed to find it. The other 29 didn't. And it was a hairline crack in a spar. And one guy used a bit of cotton wool, which he was running over the mast, looking to see if there was a snag anywhere. And that's how he detected it. Another guy had a magnifying glass out, and he was going around, you know, with his little eyeglass, and he spotted it as well. So I'm not sure a drone would ever spot those things. And I think if you're not going to survey the mast, then I think you should caveat that in your report. If you do survey the mast, those are the sort of things potentially you're looking for. Is that good advice, Kerry? Cracks in
Masts are comparatively rare, and they can be hard to spot. Other times they're dead easy to spot. But if you're doing a very large mast, then it'll be resting on a trestle, and it may be very difficult to turn it over and look at the underside. And so you're not going to spot the fine crack. So that is a worry. Now, in our rigging company, my rigging company, more than half the masts were surveyed by us going up in a bosun's chair. I can't say that I really approve of it very much, but, well, you get to see the mast, which is 1 foot in front of your face all the way up. You may very often be faced with a customer who sees that he's going to be charged a lot of money to have his mast taken out and put in trestles, and he'll bluntly refuse to do it. You've just got to cover it as best you can and say, look, I'll go up in the bosun's chair and I'll do it like that. But you've got to understand that it's not as good as having a survey done on trestles. You also have to watch out. I have this mate who's a very experienced rigger, and he went up in his bosun's chair on his own in February one day. And the fall of the tackle, unfortunately, took a turn around a deck fitting. He was by himself and he couldn't get down again. Got to watch that kind of thing. Don't go up masts at all, either on a winch or on a tackle, unless you've got a reliable colleague with you, and do not let them go off to get a cup of tea. You're going to be up there for a long time if you go up. I hate it personally and won't go, but I'm much too old, obviously, but young people do. I've seen young people climb up the mast without a chair at all. They just climb up a damn mast, well, rather them than me. If you are going to be caught out by some feature of the rigging that's there, I'm afraid the only answer to that is experience and really look hard. The cotton wool idea surprisingly works because it will catch in the little crack there. But that only works if you actually apply the cotton wool to every bit of it. I don't know. The average surveyor would be able to reasonably say, well, you could have a crack there, and you might have a crack there, but you're not going to have a crack in that bit there. No way is that bit going to have a crack. They crack around sheet boxes and around halyard holes, that kind of thing. Although they sometimes crack where people have drilled them for rivets.
Matthew, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to ask something about stress. I mean, as an example, there's a small boat, small 30-foot boat on the pontoon where I've got my boat, and one of the spreaders has recently dropped from being horizontal to 10 degrees down.
Catch them as they go past another boat.
Yeah, and I noticed it, and I said to the guy, the owner had noticed it, and I said, you've got a problem with your spreader. Identifying the problem is one thing, but what do you do about the underlying factor that there's some sort of stress that's causing that? Because that, once you start following that, you potentially open a huge can of worms, because it could be to do with the whole setup of the rig and the deck fittings where the shrouds and the forward backstays are attached on the boat.
The overwhelming reason why spreaders are out of true is because they caught them on something they went past, which is nearly always another boat down the harbour there somewhere or other. It's very unusual for the spreaders to come out of true just by the stresses in the rigging, because they should have been set so that they angled properly to bisect the angle, and therefore there isn't any up and down stretch on them very much. You can get them come down sometimes, I don't know, because people want to sail around them in some extraordinary way. I have seen that. If you pull the spreaders out of true very much, then you're going to damage them, because they're not meant to take that stress. The inner end isn't very strong. It's not like a winch fitting or something like that. The inner end is quite, you can break it with your hand.
What's your view on the length of life for aluminium, Kerry? Because I mean, my boat's 40 years old, and the rig it's the original mast. I've just put a new boom on it, and I've redone all the standing rigging, etc., and had it out. But there are people out there who will say that as long as you look after it, an aluminium rig will go for 50, 60 years. Have you got a view on that?
Truth of the matter is, Sparlight was a company I had most to do with. That was in the 1960s, and there were still loads of those masts out there. The aluminium, the things that have to the aluminium is poultice corrosion, rivet hole corrosion, little cracks. The anodizing will have long gone if it's 40 years old, I would have thought. It's not worth re-anodizing them. It's hugely expensive and difficult to do. Better go and buy another spar. Do they suffer with vibration? Well, I've never seen it. You'd think they would, but I've never seen it. They don't seem to work hardened or anything like that. When they collapse, why do they collapse? Same reason I just said, because they caught it on another boat going down the harbour. It's very rare for them to collapse actually under stress of storm or waves or anything like that. The carbon fibre ones do. The carbon fibre ones, you're just sailing along and the whole thing comes down around your head. The aluminium ones, it's very rare. They're far, I'll tell you what, of every damaged aluminium mast I ever saw, 7 out of 10 had been damaged on the trestles. Somebody backed a car into them or something like that. I think that if you are careful to check your spar and go up and down and look at it, if it's got cracks in it, then you're going to have to do something about that. And it depends how bad the crack is and where the crack is.
I mean, what I've noticed on my mast, which is it's a Selden mast, originally 40 years old, and I've put a new boom on it, and the thickness of the aluminium, if you compare my new boom to my old boom, the old boom, which was aluminium, was, I don't know, twice as thick. Just it's a bit like fiberglass. They seem to overlay everything because they didn't quite understand how strong it had to be. Is that a fair comment to make?
Yes, it is. That when the first aluminium masts came out, they were too thick, it's true. But equally, the truth is that Selling mast is highly competitive, and one way you can save money is by putting a lighter section.
Yeah, that's material.
But all the sections are, every mast maker has a catalogue of the sections that he uses, and these have been around now for many years, and none of them, virtually none of them, have a bad reputation. Again, overwhelmingly, what's likely or possibly could happen is, I can remember this boat I was on. In fact, it had a wooden mast. It was a long time ago, but the planking at the side of the boat had given way where the shrouds were fastened. But even then, the mast didn't come down. It stood. They don't. I don't. Is yours deck stepped or stepped down?
Keel. Mine's keel stepped. Keel stepped.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point, actually. I had to do an awful lot of work. It was keel stepped onto the cabin sole, which was wood, but underneath the wood there was a big chunk of fiberglass sitting over the not the keel box, the bilge. So solid underneath. The wood, because the mast has always, there's a lot of water coming down the mast even now. And I ended up I had to cut out a section of the cabin sole about 2 foot by 1 foot and expose the fiberglass underneath. And I actually ended up I built a fiberglass bath, which was about the same, well, just slightly wider and slightly longer than the mast fore to aft. And I actually then put the plate inside that fiberglass bath. I epoxied the fiberglass bath straight onto the fiberglass and then cut the wood to go around it. And the water now drains down into the bath, and I've put a hole in that and it drains straight into the bilge. But it was quite, I don't know how many boats were done like that, but when they designed it, they designed it for the keel step plate to be put straight onto the wood of the cabin sole, and over 40 years it just rotted.
Well, you can buy an actual aluminium step, which is a cast thing which the mast can sit on, and they will screw.
Well, that was there. That was there, or on top of the wood.
Yeah.
But any water that came down the inside of the rig from any of the explode, and the previous owner had put tape over every hole that he could find, and obviously to try and stop the water going down. But over the years, the water had just dripped down and pulled on the wood, and the wood was completely rotten.
I'm not very surprised, because what happens there is that all the boats, you think, oh, I've got this lovely fiberglass boat and it's absolutely beautiful, it's waterproof. No, it's not. There will always be water in the bilges. And inevitably, the mast is at the lowest point there. And although it might stand up 2 or 3 inches above the keel, it's wet. And as surveyors, when you go out to do a survey, you will always think, oh my God, now I'm going to go down and look at the mast foot, and I'm going to find horrible things when I get there. I have seen mast bottom end, which had got serious galvanic problems and everything else because it was in the water all the time.
Yep.
So yes, I think that is a very interesting point, that you're going to have to go down and check out and see what has been done to try and preserve the foot of the mast. I have to say that although I like the idea of a keel step mast, the deck step ones are a whole heap more convenient. Then if they do fall, they fall over the side, and there they are in the water, and you carry on. So that's okay. They don't break halfway up. They're much easier to set up and take down, and they don't suffer from that particular problem, which is you can never, in the long term, prevent the hole in the cabin roof from leaking. They always do. There's nothing you can really do about it.
Self-amalgamating tape on top of a rubber boot. Correct.
Well, all those things. Yeah, that's what people.
Anything that works.
Yeah. The mast is going to be standing there for years and years and years. When you're not there, it's going to be, I don't know, moored up in the harbour somewhere in all kinds of wind and weather and what have you. Not to mention the fact that you might actually take the thing and sail it across the Atlantic or something. So it's a bad joint. The joint at the coach roof is a bad joint. Better off if the mast stands on top. there should be, if it does stand on top, you as a surveyor must go down and have a look at the stainless steel pillar that's underneath. And if there isn't a stainless steel pillar that's underneath, then the damn one should be. There are some people who think they can get away with having just standing on top of a bulkhead. I don't think so. Bulkheads are made of wood, and they don't stand up well to 20 years of stress. That's it. So you've raised a good point there. Mast foot is a point to go and look at. It's always a point to go and look at. You will always see, there are often sheave boxes right at the very bottom, and they tend to be a mess as well.
Gary, can I jump in again? And one of the things that I think some surveyors don't understand is when it's appropriate to call in a specialist. And I suspect with, well, you know, someone who knows a bit more than you do in a certain area. A lot of surveyors these days, for example, won't necessarily do an engine survey, so they will recommend that the vessel owner gets an engine specialist or the engine manufacturer to come and have a look at the engine. At what point might a surveyor choose to call in a rigging specialist?
If we're talking about surveyors generally, first case, you never pass the engine or survey the engine yourself. You get in a competent firm of local engineers with a good reputation and a proper business, you know, not just some local guy who says he can do it, but proper one, and they come in and check out the engine properly, and if it costs a bit of money, it costs a bit of money. You are responsible for organising that, but you go along with what they say. If they say the engine's got to be rebored or something, then it's got to be. And that's the end of it. You do not do that yourself.
So what about
a carbon fibre mast?
Yeah.
If you're ever asked to survey a carbon fibre mast, go straight to the manufacturers and tell them to come and do it. You cannot survey a carbon fibre mast because it's got cracks internally which you will never be able to find. What was the other things? Well, sails really. Sail, because you always take the sails to sailmaker. If there's anything odd about them at all, you take them to a sailmaker. Other things you're supposed to know. You're supposed to be the expert. You should do it.
You also, I mean, increasingly nowadays on any bigger, well, even on a small boat, you've got quite a lot of electrical gear going up the rig as well. I mean,
well, you're very right. When I first started doing surveys, boats had one wire in them running to one light somewhere halfway down the boat.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you take a panel off the side, and it's crammed with wires in there. You don't know about those. You get an expert. If the owner wants that lot checked out, it's a separate thing altogether. You would, if you're a surveyor, you went in and saw one who had been obviously drenched with salt water, or somebody kicked the front in or something like that. If you could see obvious problems with it, then you would certainly report them. But it's not up to you to say whether the what do we call it? The navigation stuff is working properly or not. You get expert into that, which is you ring up the company that supplied the equipment in the first place. That would be the usual thing, and the guy will come along and check that all out. People have all sorts of stuff on board, loads of it. And as I say, massive wires in there. You'd think it was something to do with NATO or something so much in there. That definitely so. So that was what 4 items we said: sails, carbon masts. But you wouldn't normally get in somebody from, say, Selden or one of the Kemps to come and look at a mast. They don't expect to come out and check out masts on boats. It's up to the surveyor. The surveyor might condemn a mast and say, look, it's got a great big dent in the side of it here. You can see it's not straight, and I'm seeing there's a dent there. Where it's been dented, it cannot be recovered. You can't straighten them out again. This mast is going to collapse if you go on using it because it's no longer got its section. It takes its strength from its section, and if the section's been much damaged, then and the owner will say to you that he's not going to condemn his mast, and it costs him a lot of money to get another one. Well, that's what he wants to do. That's his business. But you make it clear that you don't think that mast is satisfactory. Pretty well the only thing, big dents in it, or big cracks. If it had big cracks, I don't mind, it had big cracks. I've never seen a mast. I've seen them with little cracks in often, but never seen them with big cracks in. Has that seem sensible? Hope it does.
Well, who else would like to ask anything specifically about the module if you are studying it or planning to study it? Anything
About
else
what,
to
sorry?
do? I'm sorry, Kerry, I'm just inviting further comments and
Oh,
criticism,
yeah, we go.
comments and arguments and discussion points. So the opportunity whilst you've got Kerry here just to pick on his knowledge. So anything else you particularly want to know?
I just want. I mean, in my view, doing a rig survey, it's a specialist area in itself. You know, you can't do a rig from the deck at all.
No.
Well, you can't do it from the deck. You can't look up.
Yeah, you can't even. Yeah, but you can't even begin. You can't give it. You can't pass any judgment. You can say there is a
up
pass.
to eye level, and that's it. I have seen people standing at the bottom of the pair of binoculars looking up. Well, utter waste of time. You wouldn't see if there was, seriously damaged fitting up there. But the boats that you are going to survey are overwhelmingly family cruising boats, really, when it comes down to it. The owner might not quite think like that, but that's what they are. And very occasionally, a long-distance sailor, like my mate Kit, who sails down to the Caribbean and back and forth across in a Jeanneau. If you are having to do with wild sailing enthusiasts, even an advanced club sailor, he will already be right on top of his rig for himself. He'll be all over it all the time, and you can't tell him anyway. He won't listen to anything you've got to say because he thinks he's cleverer than you. Be polite and smile.
Yeah.
Sign his bit of paper. Has that okay? You do see nowadays people who fitted extraordinary rig arrangements, well, particularly furling ones, but spinnaker handling ideas, this, that, and the other. Well, show a lot of interest and see if we show you how it all works, because there's no reason why you should know.
Has anyone come across this new app called Smart Sail? I don't know how readily available it is at the moment, but they're certainly out there selling it. And the idea is it's the size of a matchbox. It's attached to the sail, and it records the whole performance of the sail. And the surveyor could, if he or she so wished, ask for a download to actually see how that sail has been performing. And I wondered, Kerry, if you think that's good progress or might be slightly worrying progress.
I'd be very surprised if that could be done. A sail will perform well because it's comparatively new and not too floppy, and because it's kept its shape. The camber across the sail is what was originally intended. Now that's very rare if the sail's more than about 6 or 7 years old. They stretch out because people won't pull up on the halyard too hard or pull on the outhole too hard or whatever. The sail's just got strained and stretched, and it will inevitably stretch more in the flat bits than it does in the tripling where the seams are. I don't see how any electronic piece of gear could know anything about that. Whatever, I don't know, I wouldn't have thought so. I'd have thought you'd get more sense out of any sailmaker who came and looked at it. He just cast his eye over it and tell you that was, well, if you're going to go racing, you need a new one of these because the boat's going to be noticeably down on performance if the sail is old and off shape. It won't have any drive to it. Well, it will, but not enough. There again, if your sailing is day sailing or family sailing or coastal cruising, then you don't really care whether you're going to get the best performance or not. You're far more interested in having a nice day out. Cup sailors and racing sailors, they take all that very seriously. Golf spend £5,000 on a new sail. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do, and if it makes them happy, then good. I do not have any faith in electronic gadgets that you could stick on, and I'm not sure what an electronic gadget could possibly do. But that's not really for me to say, because I've never seen one, I've never used one. I might love it if I actually saw it.
Well, it's called Smart Sale. I'm sure if you did a Google search, it's like all these wonderful new things. You know, you just take a download of it and put it onto your laptop. And it'll tell you everything you want to know about that sale over whatever period of time you want to know. But sometimes I always worry that too much information can be a bad thing. And sometimes, you know, your gut instinct, you're right, Kerry, your gut instinct, when you look at it, you have knowledge, you look at it and you can tell whether or not it's fit for purpose, or maybe you want to put a recommendation in that it's reaching the end of its life, or whatever, rather than just relying on hard data. I don't know. It's an interesting debate.
The average sailor, apart from the ones who own rigging businesses, don't know enough about it to make a judgment of anything that you would have from a gadget like that. I think that there is a tendency, particularly amongst racing sailors and sticking out dinghy sailors, to stick gadgets on as a confidence booster. I've seen it done an awful lot. People come along and stick a little box on somewhere or other, and that's why they won that race, they say, or didn't win it, as the case may be. And you'll see everyone else got a little box next week as well. I would be very chary about buying anything like that unless I really trusted the person who sold it to me. I personally don't understand what it would do, but you know, I don't know everything. So there you go. You can look up a sail and you can see if it's off shape. Very often you'll see it's got a line across it where it comes against the shrouds when it's paid off. You can see the sail deteriorates markedly in the first year of its use, if it's used very much. And so you will often see that class rules say you're not allowed to replace the sails, except now and again, I don't know, give you a date when you're allowed to replace them, because otherwise it turns into a money race, not a sailing race. And you've got some guy who spends a great fortune on replacing sails all the time. And so he tends to win the races, whereas somebody else like me wouldn't be able to afford to do that.
Any other questions? Any other points?
Have you got any specific questions about specific damage or anything you've ever seen? Like, I don't know, winches that don't work, or any particular kind of rigging, like, you know, the 1x19s are okay, but would you be better off with a different rigging?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
With regard to synthetic rigging, I'm responsible for managing a few sports boats. They're called Club 1720s, and the backstay is synthetic with rather like a fiberglass sort of a section that sticks out to keep it off the mainsail. So the back of that synthetic rope does constantly rub from the top of the mainsail as it's left off. Our insurers recommend we change them every year because they fail, and it's mostly UV degradation which they cite as the main failure, or the stitching on the loop where these things are attached top and bottom. And with that, I'm just wondering, with synthetic rigging supposedly becoming more and more popular, what's the insurer's view on the lifespan of that, or indeed the surveyor should you recommend? And also, how can you look for failure points? Does it just go like a carbon fiber mast, or what should the surveyor look out for?
The insurance company or the court, if you find yourself standing there, will believe everything the surveyor says without question. They don't know anything about it, don't know one end from the other, and so they've got your word to go on and nothing else. Now, synthetic rigging is a very new thing, and instantly an old traditionalist like me wouldn't trust it. However, some of these fibers are extremely strong. Most of them are subject to UV degradation, and you cannot tell by looking at them whether they've suffered that or not. And I well, I don't do surveys anymore, but if I did have to do one, or if a mate came and asked me, I'd say I'd replace that every year if I were you. And you say, good God, you know what it costs. Well, I'm sorry about that, but if I were you, I'd stick to some stainless steel, because you can see. I mean, a lot of old hands used to say, I'd rather see galvanized rigging up there, actually, because you can see what's wrong with that. Whereas the stainless rigging can indeed, in fact, loses strands out the middle of it. Or sometimes I have seen stainless rigging that was supposed to be good stuff. In fact, when you opened it up, it was actually rusty inside, or it was really rusty, but it deteriorated inside. There you go, that's the point. I do not think that any surveyor today, different in 10 years' time, but any surveyor today should put his name to guaranteeing synthetic rigging, because you don't get the manufacturer to come and look at it. They'll send a rep round to have a look at it without question.
I'm just looking in the synthetic yacht rigging book by Nick Parkin, and there is something here on service life. Recommendations by bodies like the RYA is the replacement of wire rope rigging every 7 years if racing and 10 years if only cruising. A guide, service life synthetic standing rigging, PBO, they recommend life expectancy of 4 years. Carbon southern spars EC6 or Hall spars 10 years or more, and HMPE, C-section on HMPE rigging for life expectancy. So that probably doesn't help you a great deal, Mark, but there is information out there on this.
I didn't make it very clear there. I didn't really differentiate there between standing rigging and running rigging. Of course, the running rigging is all synthetic. Occasionally, you'll find that it's got some wire in it, but nearly all of it is synthetic. And you don't see. We used to see rigging that was half wire and half synthetic, but you don't see that much anymore. It's all synthetic, and it's pretty good stuff. But it looks tatty. And when it looks tatty, it is tatty. But it doesn't really matter, because if a halyard breaks, you've got a problem, because you've got to mouse another one down through. But that's it. It's no worse. If your standing rigging breaks, which was wire in every case except now with this modern synthetic stuff, if your standing rigging breaks, you may lose the mast. You may have a terrible accident. You may be stuck out there and have to be rescued by the Coast Guard.
So just reading on a bit further, Kerry, HMPE rigging, when I posed a question of service life to one of the manufacturers of HMPE rigging, the response was, we have not worked out any rule for strength loss due to UV. DSM claims that the fibres can withstand the UV very well. This has also helped with the impregnation in the ropes. I know of rope being used uncovered in standing rigging for 8 years that is still in use and serviceable. They go on down here a bit more. They say the data presented by US Sailing in the reference document indicates that HMPE line will, based purely on UV degradation, have about 65 to 80% of its original tensile strength after 20 months of continuous exposure, about 50 to 75% of its original tensile strength after 5 years of continuous exposure, and about 40% to 70% of its original tensile strength after 10 years of continuous exposure. So there you go. It sounds to me like it's technology that's changing all the time, and obviously...
That is correct. What you say is technology that's changing all the time is quite correct. But there are lots of reasons why rigging will deteriorate over and beyond UV degradation. The usual reason why it's deteriorated is chafe or bad handling of one sort or another. Somebody's trying to get the car over it or whatever. But there are lots of reasons why rigging will deteriorate. And if it's something that you have never seen as a surveyor or are not familiar with, say so. Do not try and wing it. Don't try and pretend you know things that you don't. And be clear about that. There you go, this guy's got a set of rigging, and he tells you he had it 3 years ago. Did he? Or did he have it 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, or something else? You know, people don't necessarily tell you the truth by any manner of means. They'll sell you all sorts of stories when they come to set you up to do their survey. trying to make themselves sound richer than they actually are. Be fair and firm about it. If the rigging looks absolutely fine, then it probably is. But if it looks tatty, worn, discoloured, got skags out of it, starting to unravel, something like that, you're a surveyor and you could make a judgment on that. But I am not happy with synthetic lines for standing rigging. I agree instantly that there are plenty of lines with plenty of materials out there which are very, very strong and entirely adequate strength-wise, but you don't know what's happened to it, and it may not be strength-wise any good anymore if it's been up there for several years.
I don't know if that helps, Mark. Okay, I mean there is
no, it's very informative. I have one other question, or something to share with you, really. I was speaking to our local rigger on the marina recently, just regarding some things on the previous video that you alluded to earlier. And one of the things on that he said to me was a common thing, if he sees a failed shroud, we'll say, on the starboard side, or one that's damaged, as Kerry was explaining, then he insists that the owner replaces the opposite port hand side one as well, so that the rig remains in balance. And I think it's important that a surveyor would state that if he spots something, if you agree it's true. The other thing that he said he has come across is some riggers will replace, say, a 6mm with 8mm to make it stronger on one side and leave the other side. You've just possibly made the whole rig very likely to come down when pressure comes on one side from the other, because there's different strengths and different loads now after being introduced into the whole scenario. So I just thought that was very interesting. So you've got one shroud failed, you got to replace the one on the other side too. So it's a double cost for the owner, who's probably looking at you perplexed. Just wonder if you agree with that.
If you're looking at a set of rigging and you go along, you go down and you go to the bottle screws, and you look at the swages there, and you see that one of the shrouds or the headstay or whatever it may be is breaking off, and you've got loose strands of wire sticking out there, and it looks a bit brown and a bit sort of rusty down there. And you look at it and think there's all water in that. There's something wrong with these with this. Most likely it's been up there too long. Stainless is just a word, really. You don't know what the specification of the wire was when it was put up there first. It might have been very good, or it might have been not so hot. It might have been sold, as so many things are, to try and make the most economic sale possibly, try to be competitive in the market. If one of your shrouds, backstay, forestay, is showing signs of definite deterioration, at the very least you'd go and look at the same place on each of the others, but it'd really be a recommendation to change the whole blooming lot. Now, if somebody had, for some reason, changed one of the shrouds for a larger diameter, then why did he do that? I mean, what was wrong with the one that was standing up there before? You'd be very doubtful about that. The main reason why you replace one is because it showed some signs of deterioration. If one of your shrouds is showing signs of deterioration, then they are all ready to be replaced, unless they've partly been replaced already at different times. But really, you want the whole lot done all in one go, so that they're all the same thing and you know what you're looking at. Again, the fact that one of the shrouds is of a larger diameter than the other doesn't actually matter. It will not throw the loads out disproportionately. The stretch in the shrouds is very, very small, not like the old, you know, we used to have one actual rope rigging, and so the rigging on the lee side used to hang down in festoons when you're beating up to wind, but it's not like that anymore. And yes, you will see that the lee shrouds are not as tense as the windward ones, but if somebody just gone up a gauge, I would not think that in itself was a danger or problem. The problem there is that you want to know why he changed it. What was wrong with the shroud that was there before? What was wrong with the bar that was there before? Because if that one was damaged in some way, then perhaps the support one was damaged and the starboard one probably is. Does that seem sensible?
Yeah, thank you. It does. One other thing that I was spoken again to the same rigor the other day, and it's something that may affect all of us, although I'm not sure. It's to do with Brexit. So we will say that you have your rigging that's purchased in England, and it has the British standard mark on it, kite mark, whatever. And then you bring your boat to a European country and insure it under European insurers, and it doesn't have this European Union CEE mark on the part, could be any part of the boat, and there is failure, then there's a possibility being put out there that you're not insured because the part you have is not under European standards, it's British standards. Sounds a bit crazy, but I just wanted to flag it.
I've come across one time, in the days of my youth, I used to deliver yachts across Europe, and also I was one of the 7 wise men that set up the EU in the first place, and there's a great deal of misunderstanding about it. I can remember before we had the RCD that we would try to sell a boat to a bloke who was living in France, and it had to be homologated. Homologation took place in a field down in southeast France, which had one inspector who might turn up. Well, he's only part-time anyway. The idea was to prevent the sale of British boats or any other boats in France. They are very strong on that. I can remember reading this report on BMW cars written in a French magazine, which said they were dangerous to take on the road and you should not take your children in them. They are very, very fierce about that and will lie like flatfish to make some point. I imagine, I really don't know. I think that, see, people think that the RCD procedure is a kind of Lloyd's, if you like. It's a test to see whether the boat is satisfactory or not. No, it isn't. It's to see whether you've met a reasonable standard so that you're not supplying cheap stuff that would undercut another country's, particularly France. Well, you see, they have this thing all the time now, aren't they, about level playing fields and all that crap. So yes, that is going to happen to a lot of people. They're going to be told that, but it doesn't matter what rigging you've got. It's not up to, French people can't, you can't not have a boat insured. The boat will be insured. Are you saying that persons bought a boat in, let's say, the United States, right, who incidentally very often apply the CE rule to their boats, and because, I don't know, for whatever reason, the boat has now been taken to France and you go to insure it, would a French company refuse to insure it? Yeah, probably, but below that, get it insured.
I think he's saying they'd insure it, but if you had a problem, the way I interpret it, if you had a problem and then it was found out that the wire you'd used in your rigging was British CE certified, the French insurance company might turn around and say, we don't recognise that, you're not insured.
Well, it depends if you were insured with the French company or not. Yeah. If it was a British boat and you took it there and it was insured with the British company, the insurance will still hold, provided that's what it says and that you can take it overseas. Then your insurance would still hold up. I do certainly tell you that there's 2 things that will happen to you when you take your boat abroad. If you go to France, but not to Spain, if you go to France, they certainly will try that one on you. Oh, it's British, it's rubbish, you've got to have French. We won't replace that with French, we're going to charge you twice. But I don't know that that's necessarily so. I once had the misfortune when delivering a boat down to have my glasses smashed. And I thought, oh God, in those days, a new pair of glasses was, I don't know, 100 quid or something. The French ones were much better and much cheaper, and they were very kind and very helpful about it. So everything that happens in Europe isn't necessarily bad. I don't think you'd ever have that problem. I do think that anybody who goes overseas and sails about should have their boat registered, which you can do with the YVDSA very cheaply, or you can do the whole thing properly. My wife used to run a registry company, and she used to have clients or sailors who were trapped up in a prison in Indonesia and weren't going to get out for a year or two because their boat was not, in the Indonesians' view, properly registered. That's not really a bother for a surveyor, but you might mention it to your client if this is going sailing off around the world. Make sure it's damn well registered and insured, incidentally, otherwise they'll arrest you for that too. But your insurance will usually be with a British company. And if you were going to insure with a French company, then they would, I don't know, put in front of you whatever requirements they had. You know, if it was their policy that you don't have that trouble really with the rigging wires because they're international. And all the wires come from the same place. You don't really have that trouble with rigging very much. You can have trouble with the actual boat itself, which they might give you stick about. But remember that the RCD procedure is fundamentally a paperwork procedure to make sure that manufacturers are manufacturing what they say they're manufacturing, and that they haven't used. There's nothing compulsory about the RCD. When you go to check a boat out for people, set it up, hardly anything's compulsory. There's about 3 things, I think. But it's entirely open to the boat builder to say, we've always done it like that. Okay, well, that's good enough then. You don't have to meet any particular requirement. You don't have to meet all those standards at all. That's completely not so. However, that is not what the customers, what the boat owners think. They think that when they've got their boat checked out by the RCD, they've got a kind of Lloyd's certificate. Lloyd's, you know what I mean by Lloyd's and those people. They think they've got a certificate like that. They have not. But nonetheless, it's okay. Nothing wrong with it. All good stuff. Lots of people have been paid huge amounts of money to go and hang about in Japan for months, years, doing all that. If you would go, if you were going to build a boat and take it overseas, I would say Germanischer, Lloyd's, any one of the AMC, any of them, any of the big insurance. They are insurance companies. Lloyd's is an insurance company. That's what they do. They are not boat builders.
I think that's probably a good point. If no one has got any other questions to start to wind things up, I'm just conscious of time. Any last thoughts from anybody? Anything else people want to know or ask?
Just a quick last thought. Please do contact Lorna, and please do contact your assessors. You're going to do all these papers. Don't be afraid to contact your assessors. Most of the assessors are quite kindly blokes, and it's actually very interesting to talk to you about these things. Usually the discussions are done by email. It's not very easy to do it by phone because people get misled over the phone or they're not available. Don't be afraid to get in touch with me if you want to ask me anything else, and your other assessors too for the other papers. I don't do all the papers, I only do a few of them. And there are other assessors, lots and lots of other assessors who are boring old geezers just like me.
Knowledgeable, experienced people, Kerry.
What, sorry?
With age comes experience, Kerry.
With age comes experience, it certainly does. Yes, I've had everything go wrong in a boat that you can possibly have, and everything go wrong in a car that you can possibly have. Those are proud boasts. I think I did my first survey when I was 16. I didn't have any qualification of any sort whatsoever, except that I knew all about boats.
Yeah, wonderful. Lorna, anything you wanted to add? Or?
No, just as Kerry said, if you ever have any questions, please don't feel like you're in it alone. We're here to help. So just send me an email or give me a call, and I can put you in touch with the relevant assessor for guidance. So yeah, just stay in touch.
Same old, same old. It's a long struggle battling through these papers. A long struggle. And sitting there by yourself, you get fed up. So don't be afraid to get in touch and have a bit of a refresh by talking to us. Lorna's very helpful, you'll find. So good.
So
From you. Look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry. Can I just, on behalf of everybody, thank you for giving up your time and for sharing your knowledge. which is at times, I think, encyclopedic. And
Love to hear from you.
and that's great. And if I can, just before we close out, and be a bit cheeky and just give a little plug for the Marine Surveying International Fest 3rd edition, which is coming up on the 30th of November. If you're not familiar with it or don't know what on earth I'm talking about, it's a day, 12 hours for small craft surveyors. Starts at 6 o'clock UK time, one new presentation on the hour for 12 hours, 12 presentations in total. If you don't want to sit through 12 hours, you can buy the videos. And Laura and I have agreed that students that don't go and book it on the internet, it's £100 if you book it online. If you want to book it directly, Laura will sort you an invoice out and charge you £50. So there's a 50% discount. We've got some great content. Much of it is original. Won't get published on YouTube after either. We protect that content. And I'd recommend you to go and have a look. And it's on the internet. We launched the speaker schedule yesterday. Lots of original content. And the presentation I'm most looking forward to is the one by Geoff Waddington, who's the IMS president currently. Things you see on survey and can't believe. It's just mining Geoff's photos from many, many years. Some of the craziest things you can't possibly imagine you would ever see on a boat when you get to survey it. But there we go. So that's the plug. Thank you, everybody. We'll make sure we get a copy of the video back via Lorna as soon as we can. And I hope to see you on another one of these sessions soon.
Lorna, could you send out a reminder email on that festival day, please? Because I'll forget.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Good to see you all. Thanks very much.
Cheerio.
Thanks, Kerry.
All the best.
Bye-bye, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
I'll see you again. Bye-bye, Lorna. Bye-bye, Mike.
Bye-bye.